So here we are, Stuka Joe, and we have Mike Anthony. How you doing, Mike? And yesterday I did a live video like for 2 hours and playing this game, 3 turns, La Guerra de la Triple Alianza. And then after I finished the video, I checked it and the sound was terrible. It was jumping. I had the wrong settings. I had the recording settings instead of the streaming settings. So I decided to try to fix it, and I fixed most of it. So we're going to show the game again. Hopefully the sound this time is decent, and I can show you around the game. I really like the game. It's a game on a topic that there's not many games of, and both sides play very differently. It's really they made a game out of a really lopsided war because the Paraguayans got beaten badly. And, you know, when you manage to make an interesting game on a conflict like that, I think that's worth something. So here I reset the game again. And this is a game that has very simple rules, but I think the charm of the game really comes in the cards, because the cards have events and victory points, and the way you gain cards is by capturing spaces. So for example, you see here there's an event there, international isolation. You're going to get the victory points, and then if you have, let's say at the end of the turn you captured 3 spaces, each worth 1 card, you're going to get 3 cards, and then you're going to always get 1 card at the end. So then you choose which of these events you are going to effect. So not all events will take place like in card-driven games. And this is where the game, I think, shines, in the sense that sometimes some of these events come in the nick of time to the rescue and can change the complexity of the game. And I think it's really interesting that way, that it's not a card-driven game, so you don't have really any hidden information in this game. So I like that mechanic. I think it's very soloable. I've seen it played in the conventions. It plays really fast, 2 hours, 3 hours tops. So it's a game that I think brings new life into wargaming. It's a different kind of game. It's a simpler game. And then we have the combat, which is resolved here. And today I brought this little machine that I hadn't shown it before. So this is like die rolling. I never showed my die rolling. I don't use this machine. I was going to use it for this particular playthrough. So it's a pretty kind of fun gadget. So the battles are resolved here in the display. You set up your units. They can fire units across. And it's very simple. If a unit has, for example, a strength of 3, like this unit here, you have to roll 3 or less. So combat is very simple. Let's talk about the victory conditions in the game. The victory conditions, we have victory conditions at the end of the game. Whoever has most victory points wins the game. So that's pretty straightforward. Now, when does the game end? It doesn't have a turn record track. It uses the cards as a mechanism for like as a clock. So you see the cards there that are in that space, they're event cards. When that deck is exhausted, the first player that exhausts his deck of event cards, then that's the end of the game. And then the player that has the most victory points will win the game. Okay? So that's how the game ends if all cards are exhausted. Now, the game can be lost before that. And let's take a look at the circumstances. First, let's take a look at the circumstances that affect the Paraguayan side. And the Paraguayans have 3 leaders. Each of the sides has 3 leaders in the game. And the leaders, the only purpose they serve is to allow the side to attack. To attack, you have to have a leader participating in the battle. Now, the Paraguayans have 3 leaders here. As you can see, Solano Lopez, who is the president of Paraguay, Caballero, and Estigarribia. And Solano Lopez, if he is captured, that is, if the stack that he is commanding is eliminated, he is captured, and Paraguay loses the game immediately. So that's one way in which the Paraguayans can lose. We got Steven Loniewski. How you doing, Steve? Okay, and now the other 2 leaders are Caballero and Estigarribia. If those leaders are captured, what happens is that they provide victory points to the allies. So in the case of Caballero, it's 3, and in the case of Estigarribia, it's 5. Estigarribia actually was the best general in the war, both sides considered. So those are the 3 Paraguayan leaders, and we just covered one way in which the Paraguayans can lose, that is by the capture of Solano. Now, another way that the game can end is through the capture of what is known as strategic spaces. Here we see Asunción and Cerro León in caps. These are the 2 strategic spaces for Paraguay. So what are strategic spaces? These are spaces where reinforcements can appear, and they appear at the rate of 1 new unit per turn per strategic space. Paraguay has Asunción and Cerro León. Those are the 2 strategic spaces for Paraguay. So Paraguay is going to receive 2 units as, let's say, normal reinforcements each turn. And here we have the units that start off the map. And we see here, for example, that there are units there. Reserva. Now this one's a special unit. This one starts down here. Okay. See, there's units that you see in the bottom. They have like a little card symbol on the top left corner. This one's supposed to be up here. Okay, now we're good. The ones that have the little card symbol are units that enter play. We got Justin. How you doing, Justin? Those units enter play through an event card. Some event cards bring new units in the game. So the regular reinforcements, the ones that can appear every turn at a rate of 1 reinforcement per strategic space, are these ones here, the Infanteria and Caballeria. Notice that the Paraguayans, the best units in the game, have a strength of 3, but they don't have any reinforcements with a strength of 3. They have strengths of 2, they have cavalry with strength of 2, and then you have these units here, more reserve units, strength of 1, and some indigenous units, and some units even with a strength of 0. So that's one thing that is characteristic of this game. Mike, we got E4 Airman. How you doing? Mike, the game is not available yet, but NAC Wargames, which is a Spanish company, is making some efforts in the United States. When it's official, I'll announce it in my channel, and I'll tell you the exact place where you can get it in the United States. But right now, there's nothing official. So we're talking about the regular reinforcements. Notice that the Paraguayans, the best they can hope for is units with a strength of 2. And they have 2 strategic spaces. So that's 2 regular units per turn. Now let's talk about the strategic spaces and the reinforcements for the other side, which is the alliance. And this game is called it's the War of the Triple Alliance. Brazil, Argentina, and Uruguay. Now Uruguay even though it was a member of the Triple Alliance, doesn't have a very strong military presence in the game. Let's take a look at Brazil. Brazil has two areas where it fights the war here. Here you see Paraguay in the middle, the red tinted spaces, right? And here you have one area of Brazil, Rio Grande do Sul. And then there's another area here to the north of the map, which is Mato Grosso. So the Paraguayans and the Brazilians are going to be fighting in two different areas. So that's a problem that the Paraguayans have. They have, even though they have a central position, they have various fronts. Now in Mato Grosso, if we take a closer look, you're going to see there in the top Cuiabá. And Cuiabá is a strategic space in Mato Grosso, meaning that the Brazilians will receive one regular reinforcement in Cuiabá every turn. So there's going to be a buildup of units at Cuiabá. If you take a look at the starting setup here, you see that Brazil is pretty weak at the beginning of the game. They have a 2-strength unit in Cuiabá, and these 1-strength units here guarding the approaches to Cuiabá. And the Paraguayans actually are better concentrated. Here in Concepcion, they have 2 units. So they have 2 units in Concepcion and some cavalry units. So it's very tempting as a Paraguayan player. You want to knock out the Brazilians from Mato Grosso. And sometimes the game lends itself to do this early on. And here the burden of attack is going to be on the Paraguayans early on. So this is one strategic space, Mato Grosso. But if we go now to the area of Rio Grande do Sul, you see that there's 2 strategic spaces in Rio Grande do Sul. And those are, you have Rio Grande and Porto Alegre. So that means that every turn, the Brazilians are going to receive 3 reinforcements. 1 over there in the north in Mato Grosso in Cuiabá, and 2 here. So right now, we're talking about the Paraguayans receiving 2 per turn, the Brazilians 3. But of course, the Brazilians are not alone in this thing. They have, as allies here, the Argentinians. And Argentina has 2 strategic spaces. You can see there Buenos Aires. That's a strategic space. And the other strategic space that they have is upriver here, which is Santa Fe. So that means that each turn, the alliance is going to receive 5 units, 3 Brazilian units, 2 Argentinian units, and the Paraguayans are only going to receive 2. Now, this game is called the War of the Triple Alliance. And the Triple Alliance was Brazil, Argentina, and Uruguay. And we have Justin. The map has English descriptions. Yes, okay, one thing I forgot to mention. NAC Wargames is publishing their games in both English and Spanish. So this map that you see here is actually printed on both sides. This map is printed in English. The back side is printed in Spanish. The cards that you see, there's 2 sets of cards. This is the English set, and there's another identical set in Spanish. The battle board here is printed in English, one side, and the other is in Spanish. And it brings 2 sets of a rule book and a companion book, one set in English and one set in Spanish. So they are really going out of their way to bring the components in both languages. And so as soon as I stated before, as soon as I have any official information as to where you can get the game in the United States, I'm going to be the first one. And you're welcome, Justin. So we're talking about the Paraguayans are in a tough position here because they will be receiving only 2 units per game as regular reinforcements, while the Alliance is going to be receiving 5. Okay, so that's a considerable advantage for the Alliance. But at the beginning of the game, the Paraguayans have a really nice concentration of forces on certain spaces that are really important. So let's take a look at that. The Paraguayans have two of their armies concentrated on the border here with the Argentinians. You have one here at Itapiru. Let's take a closer look at that army there. Okay, so we have here at Itapiru, you see that the Paraguayans have their largest army. And in this game, the most you can stack in one space is 6 units. So here you see the 6 units the Paraguayans have. They have 2 3-strength units and 4 2 3-strength units and 4 2-strength units. 14 combat factors in total. And the Argentines in nearby areas, well, very weak. So this is at the beginning of the game, it's the happy times for the Paraguayans. And let's see where the Paraguayans can go. First, they may go downriver, try to go to Santa Fe, that strategic space, and Buenos Aires, and they can go down this river, which is this is the Paraná River. And we'll talk about rivers in this game because there's 2 kinds of rivers in this game. The main rivers, which are these really thick river representations here, and then there's some of these lines are in blue, like here, for example, between Nagoya and Victoria. These are, like, you can say, like minor rivers. There's a form of strategic movement using the main rivers, which is really important. But for now, let's look at the situation with that huge army in Itapiru. It can go here downriver and go through Riachuelo, Goya, and here in Santa Fe, and I think we have some extra units that don't start the game there. So let me get them out because I was setting up. These are reinforcements. Okay. In Santa Fe, this is how the game starts. The Argentinians are very weak. They have a 2-strength unit in Corrientes and a cavalry unit here in Goya. And then this area here is very productive. You see these symbols, these are red cards. And this is how you obtain cards in this game. You obtain cards by conquering enemy spaces that have these card depictions. So Santa Fe is a strategic space, and you would get 1 card. Of course, if the Paraguayans capture Santa Fe, they deny the Argentinians of 1 reinforcement per turn, and the Argentinians can capture it back. It won't gain its function for providing reinforcements. So it's very important, these strategic spaces. But look at this area. You have 4 cards in 3 spaces. Okay? And if we continue downriver, San Nicolás, well, then there's Buenos Aires. And look what happens if the Paraguayans capture Buenos Aires. Game over. Okay. So, what did Paraguay do to bring her neighbors against her? I'll tell you right after I explain this part. Okay. So here, if Paraguay captures Buenos Aires, game over. Paraguay wins. And we talked about these other 2 Brazilian strategic spaces, Rio Grande and Porto Alegre. If they capture any of these 2, also Paraguay wins. Okay, so that's victory conditions. We've spoken about victory points at the end of the game. If the Paraguayan president is captured, Paraguay loses. If Paraguay captures any of these strategic spaces of the ally, Paraguay wins. Now, Paraguay can lose if the allies capture their 5th capital. Okay, their capital in the game, original capital, is Asunción. And Asunción, upon capture, it provides 5 victory points to the allies plus 3 cards. And then what happens is that the Paraguayans can designate another space as their capital. So we place this number 2 numeral marker here, and let's say we place it at Campo Grande, and let's say that later the Allies capture that capital, so we would invert the counter there, and the Allies get 2 victory points, and now the Paraguayans would place their 3rd capital. And let's say they place it here, and that capital also gets captured later, so that's going to be 1 more victory point. So now they can place their 4th capital, which we have another marker, and let's say they place that capital here in Capucu. Let's zoom out a little bit here. And let's say that that particular capital again is captured. They got a lot of capitals. So now the Paraguayans can place their 5th capital. And let's say that they place it here in Santiago. So we place it here. And let's say that that capital is captured. And what happens now is that the Paraguayans lose the game. So upon the capture of their 5th capital. So that's another way that Paraguay can lose. Now to the question that Airman had. We have Irving Sachs. You just got this game. Oh, great. So how did this war start? Because you were thinking, man, this Solano Lopez is a kind of a gun-ho guy. Well, he was. The thing is that before the war, before I explain that, look at the Uruguayan units. They're in red. Uruguay starts the war allied to Paraguay, and that's how the war starts. Uruguay and Paraguay have like an agreement in which each one is going to defend the other in case of an attack. And what happened was that Brazil declared war on Uruguay. And I'm going to show you the initial card for the Allies, which shows exactly that. Brazil, this is a Spanish side, here's the English side. Brazil invades Uruguay. Okay? And Brazil invaded Uruguay, and the game starts with the Brazilian army on its way already to Asunción, to Montevideo, which is the capital of Uruguay. You see this army here. This is a Brazilian army of 3 units, which you can see there. So it has 7 combat factors, and that unit is going to Montevideo. The Paraguayans are allied to the Uruguayans, and how did the conflict start? Well, Brazil invaded Uruguay, and then Paraguay. If we take a look at where Paraguay is, it didn't have at the time a common border with Uruguay. So it had to cross Argentinian territory. You see these spaces here? This is Argentinian territory. So Solano requested permission from the Argentinians to enter their territory so that they could go and help the Uruguayans. And the Argentinians, what do you think they said? They said, no, sir. So then comes Solano and says, well, so we're going to attack you too. So we're at war with you too, Argentina. So Paraguay declared war on Argentina. So that's how the war starts. And in this game, the Uruguayans that are on Paraguay's side, they're gonna fall. I mean, Uruguay will fall, and what will happen is that Uruguay, after it falls, there's an event card that will bring Uruguayan units on the side of the alliance. And these are these counters that you see there in that reserve box. By the way, that display doesn't come with the game. This one I made, and when I finish adjusting it, I'll post it in BGG in case anybody is interested. So you see that Uruguay is not going to contribute a lot in the war, and I think the reason is I think Uruguay was involved in a war before this war and was really exhausted. So Uruguay, when it comes into the game, there's just going to be 3 units that will be contributing. And there's a chance before Uruguay falls that Paraguay can strengthen their defense when Uruguay is their ally. So that's a unit that, these are units that come into play because of cards, and that's why you have that card symbol there. So that's how the war started. And it's, okay, you got a book on the subject. Okay, great. This is Irwin Thomas Wigman. I haven't read it, but it's a really interesting topic. It was a very violent conflict. 70% of the male population in Paraguay perished during this war. And so let's take a look at the sequence of play. Okay. Okay. The first phase is the transport phase. And what transport means in this game, in that phase, is transport, coastal / main river transport. This is the type of strategic redeployment or movement that this game has. You can move an unlimited number of areas that have a main river or a coast, as long as you're moving over friendly areas. So for example, let's take a look here at Buenos Aires. You see Buenos Aires is an area that is on a main river. So if it were the Allies' turn and you start with the transport phase, they could move that unit upriver, up the Paraná River, and you see over all these Argentinian control spaces, up to here, up to Corrientes. Couldn't go any further because Itapirú is blocking the approach there. And that's one thing that the Paraguayans apparently prepared for. They have 2 forts on the river here, and that's to protect the approach to Asunción. You see Asunción is just upriver there. So there's 2 forts, and what the forts do, they absorb 2 steps of losses in a combat situation. So it's not that they provide this formidable defense. They absorb 2 losses, but sometimes 2 losses is critical in the game. So this is that form of transport. It's movement across areas that have the main river and or coastal spaces. So once Uruguay falls, Brazilian units that start here in Rio Grande can move along the coast through these spaces, because once Uruguay falls, these spaces become friendly to the Allied player, and then they can move upriver. And that's very important for the Allies, because they can strengthen their units in the front very easily. And we have Eric from Eric's table. You've never heard of that conflict? Yeah, I heard about it recently too. So this is the Paraguayan War. Now let's look at the importance of river movement for the Paraguayans. Paraguayans having a central position has its advantages, because the Paraguayans will receive each turn a unit in Asunción and one at Cerro León. This is not connected by any main river, but Asunción is on a main river. So the Paraguayans may move through that transport movement, that unit up to here, up to Concepción. It can't go any further because the space here, the connection is not a main river connection. So the most it can go north is Concepción, but Concepción is pretty close to Mato Grosso, where there's going to be some fighting. And of course, from Asunción, riverine transport can take a unit as far as the Paraguayan army is advancing across this front on the riverfront there. So this is a very important way of reinforcing units. And there's another situation that involves river movement in this game, which is important. We have here the Alto Paraná, which is a branch of the Paraná River. But at the beginning of the game, this space is in Argentinian control. The next space on the river is Paraguayan, Argentinian, Paraguayan, Argentinian. But of course, at the beginning of the game, the Allies have a huge disadvantage. The Paraguayans can easily capture these three spaces quickly within 1 or 2 turns, which means that then they can move strategically using naval movements, units from Encarnacion all the way to Itapiru, maybe even reinforcements that come in from Asunción can make it all the way here to Encarnacion. And why is this important? Because this is the road into Rio Grande do Sul. It's through Encarnacion, which is defended by Argentinian units. The Brazilians don't start with many units in Rio Grande do Sul. They have their army that is set to conquer Uruguay here, 3 units, and the other Brazilian presence is this army here in Uruguayana. And that army has 3 units, so it's nothing to write home about. So the Brazilians at the beginning of the game are stretched pretty thin, and the Argentinians even thinner. So the beginning of the game, it's important for the Paraguayans to maximize their advantage and push as hard as they can. The disadvantage for the Paraguayans is that they have to fight on 3 fronts. So they have to decide how they want to win the game. Do they want to go and try to knock out one of these spaces here, Puerto Alegre, Rio Grande, or Buenos Aires, or do they simply want to move on, win on victory points and conquer areas that have these cards that provide victory points? So it's a challenging situation, and it's the type of game that at the beginning of the game, the Paraguayans will be doing the attacking and the Allies the defending, and then it will switch to the Allies doing the attacking and the Paraguayans doing the defending. And we have Ernesto Valverde. Tu esposa se llama, de apellido Encarnación y es puertorriqueña, pues, qué bueno. That's great. And Ernesto's in Costa Rica, great. Yes, I filmed this game in Spain at the convention, and but hopefully soon this game will be available in the States. But I'll announce it as soon as I have that information. So what I've been doing is setting up the game. And no, Alacane, I think that's a typo in the description of the video. I have to fix that. It's War of the Triple Alliance. So we have our victory point track. We keep track of victory points here. And I will be playing tomorrow 3 turns. I'll be playing 3 turns of the game because I've been setting up the game and leaving everything here in order. So let me see if I still have to, let me show you how the battles are resolved. We can resolve a sample battle here so you get an idea. Let's say here that the Argentinians have some forces here. They have these 3 units here. And let's say that the Paraguayans don't have so many units. They shifted 2 units south that way. So let's say here that the Paraguayans in Itapiru moved and they are attacking the Argentinians at Corrientes. In order to attack in this game, you have to bring a leader. You can't attack without a leader. So what the Paraguayans have to do now is that they have to bring one of these leaders. And of course, you don't want to risk the president, Solano Lopez, because if all his units are eliminated, you lose. And the leaders don't provide any combat bonuses. It's just that you need a leader counter to attack. So we're going to bring Caballero, and we will place him here with the units. So now let's let's place these units now in in the battle board, and we'll resolve the battle. So here is the battle board and the battlefield display, and you can see it has 2 rows or columns, 1 through 6, and 6 is because the maximum stacking limit is 6. So first we set up the defending units. So you have to place them in spaces 1 through 6 sequentially. So let's say we'll put the cavalry unit in 1, this 2 strength unit in 2, and a 3 strength unit there. And now, after setting the defenders, the attackers set up, the leader doesn't have any effect. So Paraguayans have 4 units, so we're going to place this 2 unit here in the 1 space, this other 2 unit in the 2 space, this 3 unit here, and this other 3 unit here. Now, units fire at the enemy units that are across from them. So this unit will fire to the number 1, at the number 1 unit, and also the number 1 unit, if it survives, will fire back. And the rule is here, the attackers fire first if the attack was made across a regular road space. So when we look here at how they entered the space, notice that they entered through a main river, which is very advantageous to the defenders. If the Argentinians would have moved here first to San Cosme, they would pick up a card, and then their second movement point, and by the way, I forgot to mention, infantry can move up to 2 areas, and cavalry 3. So that stack is an infantry stack. It could have moved San Cosme, 1 movement point, and here into Corrientes. And then the battle would be a regular battle where the attacker would fire first, the Paraguayans, and then the Argentines absorb the losses and then they fire back. And because the attack is made through this connection of a main river, the defenders fire first. So to signify that, there is a marker to remind us of that, and we have it here. Attack on main river, so we'll place that, there's a space to place that down here. So that means that the Argentines will fire first. So since the Argentines will fire first, these are the dice that the game brings, pretty chunky indeed. So let's pan out a little bit the camera and let's see how they do. Okay, so we first have the cavalry unit. This unit needs a 1, so here we go. And the roll is a 3, so that unit misses. This unit needs 2 or less, and it also misses. And now this last Argentine unit needs 2 or less, and it hits the Paraguayan unit in the number 3 space. So we invert the Paraguayan unit, and it is reduced. So now it's the Paraguayans' turn. There always has to be at least 1 full round of combat before any of the sides decides to withdraw. So first we fire with the number 1 unit here, Paraguayan unit. 2 or less is a hit, and it's a 3, that's a miss. The second unit, we fire with the second, and the roll is a 4, also a miss. Now the unit that got the hit, 2 or less, and that's a 1. So now this unit here suffers a hit. So we invert that unit, and that now we have this unit. Note that this unit does not have any unit in front of it, so it can fire at any unit that it wants. In this game, units that are eliminated for good. You can't bring them back. You can replenish units that are at reduced strength. They can be replenished to full strength, but if eliminated, they're gone. So here's a chance, and this Paraguayan unit will fire at the reduced Argentine unit. It needs 3 or less, and the roll is a 4. That's a miss. So now we've completed one round of combat, and now the players have to decide whether they stay or go. The attacker would decide first. So the Paraguayans say, no, hell no, we're going to stay. And the Argentinians now have to decide if they stay or they go. And if they stay, you have one more round of combat, and if they go, they retreat. So let's say that the Argentinians decide, you know, discretion is the better part of valor here. We didn't get mauled as was expected here. So we return the Argentinian units to Corrientes, and we also now return the Paraguayan units to Corrientes, right? And now the Argentinians have to retreat, and they can only retreat into controlled spaces. They could retreat up here to Fuerte Timbó, but this area is kind of a barren area. There's no, you're sandwiched there, and they would be alone, and they want to protect Santa Fe, which is downstream. So the Argentines are going to withdraw to the space here, which is Riachuelo. So we withdraw those units. And now the Paraguayans, they captured a space that provides them with a card. So we take a control marker, which is, control markers have one side showing the Paraguayan and flag, and the other one is for the Allies. So we place the control marker there, and now we pick a card for the Paraguayans. So we would pick a card here, and the card is Blanco's Uprising. The Paraguayan player places the Blanco special unit on any empty space in Uruguay. So that's the event. But in this case, in this game, the events are played in the last phase of the game, and we're still in the combat phase. But this card also, in the last phase of the game, will give the Paraguayans one victory point. So we'll say that that card is in their hand. Now, let's assume that the Paraguayans, let's say that they conquered some other space and got this card, right? Cavalry raid. And then comes the maintenance phase, which is the last phase of the game. In that phase, you always draw one card. So they would draw a third card, and then they would add the victory point value of the cards that they have in their hand. So in this case, talking about one victory point for each card. So the Paraguayans would get 3 victory points. So we mark it here. And then the Paraguayans have to choose which event they will place into effect. And that's what I like about this game, because the events sometimes are pretty important. I've had situations where the Paraguayans were having a huge offensive in Mato Grosso in the north, and then there's a card on the an allied event that precludes Paraguay in the next turn from moving any units in Mato Grosso or into Mato Grosso. And that card came in the nick of time. So let's say that the Paraguayans decide to play this card as the event card. Paraguayan player places the Blanco special unit on any empty space in Uruguay. So to signify that this will be the active event card, we place that card here in the card in use space, and the cards that were not selected for the event, because you can only select one card for the event, go to the discard pile. And then we take that unit that comes with the special card, the Blancos, and we place it in any empty space in Paraguay. And if this would have been the situation, any empty space, you can place it there in Florida. So that's just an example. I will be playing tomorrow 3 turns and explaining again the rules. And yes, I think it has a lot of replayability because of the draw of the cards, and so this is a game that is interesting for me because it's in a conflict I don't know much about, and it looks like a very interesting situation. And the Paraguayans, they have to attack and push their luck at the beginning of the game. So this will be all for today because I've been setting up the game for some hours, setting up the equipment and the video and testing it. So I will be filming. Well, I will be playing it live tomorrow night around this time again. So I really appreciate you guys showing up, and I have for you, just to let you know, I have your comments. I can see them to this side here on a TV set. I can't rotate the camera, but I'll be able to see your comments and respond. So I missed the Stukas. When were the Stukas? Today? I didn't. Today's Friday. I wasn't aware that Compass had a show today. Okay. I know. Yeah, the Stuka. I think Stuka Ace is coming out. That's Gregory Smith. Yeah, he told me we're going to do a show when it comes out, like the one we did for Zeppelin Raider. So I want to thank you guys. Thanks for tuning in, and I think all the technical problems have been solved. So this is a form of video that I will look forward to doing more often, which is actually playing a game where you guys can chip in strategies and suggestions, because it's a way of, you know, seeing how the game plays. And if you like the game, you buy it, and if you don't like it, I just saved you the cost of the game. So thanks to all of you for tuning in. And as I always say, this is Stuka Joe signing off for now. Thanks for watching, guys.